Hey, what's up guys, TotallyDubs here, and today I'm doing a video review on the Acer Predator Z35. Now this is a 35-inch widescreen curved monitor. Thank you for the description, Amazon. It's a 21:9 VA panel which runs at 144 Hz and has 4 milliseconds response time. I will list down the specs in the link in the description below, including where you can buy it, which you can find on Amazon.co.uk for £600, Amazon.com for $950, and on Overclockers UK for £600. I'll also link in the description below what is G-Sync and ULNB, which is perfectly described by 144 Hz monitor, so shout out to them, and also TFT Central's written review of the Z35, which is extremely useful if you want more details than I can provide. In other words, color reproduction tests and lag tests, for example, which are very useful when it comes to buying a monitor. So do check those out, they'll be in the description below. Now, this monitor runs at 2560 x 1080. Now this monitor means that it's only a 1080p monitor. It's not a 2K monitor, which is unfortunate. I would have loved to see it running at 3440 x 1440p, which would mean a much better resolution and a great overall experience. But it's a 144 Hz monitor nevertheless. Now you can overclock the monitor to 200 Hz, and that is done directly through the on-screen display of Acer. And Acer state that it doesn't void the warranty, well obviously not, considering it's a feature of the monitor. So you can overclock the monitor. It will depend on your setup, in other words your GPU, the way it overclocks, but 200 Hz was possible on my monitor and I used it and it was great. But given the difference of 144 Hz and 200 Hz, I hardly noticed the difference, even though I was playing a game like Counter-Strike, which was running at 350 odd frames per second, something like that. So given its specs, it's decent as it is at 144 Hz, and this is what I'll be reviewing at. I should also mention this is a G-Sync capable monitor. In other words, you need to have an NVIDIA card in order to benefit from G-Sync. G-Sync is a great feature and it's great for tearing. In other words, it reduces tearing completely due to a little chip that's included on the monitor itself. This does unfortunately add to the cost, and if you're looking, if you have an AMD card, then I would highly suggest finding the non-G-Sync model of this monitor, which I don't know on top of my head, but I would definitely suggest that because you will save yourself a lot of money in comparison to G-Sync. Now finally, in terms of specs, I should mention that it's got a HDMI 1.4 port and a DisplayPort 1.2 port, alongside 4 USB 3.0 ports on the side of the monitor, which can be found on the right hand side bottom of the monitor over here. And the inputs that I mentioned over there are underneath the monitor, which are quite hard to access, so do bear that in mind if you're going to be plugging and playing. And it also has a 3.5mm jack for headphones. It also does have DTS sound via two 9-watt speakers, which is great. I must say that the sound was actually very much impressive given the fact that it's a monitor, and the sound was overall quite well displayed, ironically displayed and portrayed through the monitor, and it had a nice, very much surround sound feel to it. Now let's get into the monitor itself. Now first of all I want to talk about its panel quality. Now the panel quality is a VA panel. Now the VA panel means that you've got quite good colors, but they don't quite match IPS color reproduction, IPS or PLS. I felt that the colors were slightly washed out in comparison to an IPS monitor, which was slightly a shame. Now I just reduced the EV of my my camera so you get a little bit more accurate colors. Obviously it's always hard to show via camera, but the colors you'll be hopefully able to see are decent. But for example, in this scene, it's a great example, and it might not be able to be portrayed properly through my camera, but the blacks over here aren't deep blacks. They're just a little bit grayish, especially over here where there's the Earth's hue coming off from the space station. It just would have been a little bit better if it was just a little bit darker black. Now this occurs because of the VA panel. If it was an IPS or PLS panel or a better optimized VA panel, then you would have got a better reproduction there. So unfortunately you do get slightly washed out colors, and that is apparent. However, the color reproduction is very nice and very accurate. The colors come out perfectly. Despite being washed out, they come out accurately, and I didn't notice any non-uniformity of the colors. Therefore, no matter where I was looking on the screen, you saw accurate colors. Now, in terms of its viewing angles, it shouldn't really matter most people when they're sitting down, but the VA panel does suffer from poor viewing angles, well, poor respectively speaking to IPS and PLS panel. So when you move left and right on the monitor, you notice a little bit of a color shift, especially washed out colors on the sides. Now, in terms of backlight bleed, that will also concern a few people. There was very minimal backlight bleed, but it was present, which is to be expected in an LED panel. Pretty much all LED panels have backlight bleed. It wasn't super noticeable, but it is present, and so you do notice a little bit of backlight bleed coming from the corners of the monitor, and you will notice a little bit of color uniformity on the sides because of that. So do bear that in mind if you're going to be looking at dark scenes. Now, so overall, what I want to mention about this monitor is the fact that its colors are decent, but they could have been better given if it was an IPS or PLS panel. It is better than a TN panel, I must say, but I have reviewed a few TN panels which have been extremely impressive, and I was very much, I would say those TN panels would do very well, almost similar to this VA panel. Now, as I said, the resolution is a little bit low, which is a major factor for me, given its price tag of £600 or more. So, unfortunately, this resolution doesn't score any boxes there in my book. Now, I want to mention the G-Sync capability and its overclocking capability. So I've got it set up as G-Sync mode enabled in my NVIDIA control panel, and I've got it at running 144 Hz through my resolution change. As I said, 2560 times 1080 is its native resolution. You can disable G-Sync and enable ULMB, so some people will prefer that in order to reduce motion blur. In my experience, I found that G-Sync was a good feature, especially given that you're paying a massive price tag on top to have G-Sync enabled. So definitely in terms of gaming, G-Sync is good to have, and you can also enable overclock mode. Now, overclock mode is accessed by the on-screen display, and this is a little grip that I have about the monitor, is the fact of where the buttons are placed. Now, the buttons are placed on the bottom right hand side, which is not to be not too surprising, but unfortunately there's no sort of display or anything like that on the monitor itself, so you can't see what button you're pressing. You kind of have to guess. But when you press it, you will notice the on-screen display. You've got a variety of options. The quick options are again, I switched it off. The quick options are gamer mode, overdrive mode, which I have off because I noticed it increased a lot of ghosting. Then you've got the volume, which I said is quite good, and then you've got input selection, which is HDMI and DisplayPort. Through the actual on-screen display, I was just checking you can see it, you've got a variety of options, including color, blue light adjustment, full 6-axis color adjustments, which in my opinion I use the user, which is better because you've got more control over the colors. Through the OSD, you can show a refresh rate number at the top right hand corner of the monitor. You can also show an aim point, which enables like a little sort of on-screen display on your monitor, which shows like a little aim. Then you've also got this mode, these settings, which are power LED mode, power LED, which you can disable the LED on the right hand side. You can also customize the ambient light, which is found at the bottom of the screen. The ambient light, let me just quickly show you this. So the ambient light is, God, if I can get to it. There we go. So the ambient light is on at the moment, and it's at the bottom of the screen. You can see where the Predator logo is over here. You can see that change. So if I go over here and change it to green, hopefully you can see the color changing over there. You can also have it on MNT status and frame rate mode, which is quite nice. You can have a variety of options like breathing, steady, and everything like that. So that all the options are quite nice to have, and in my opinion, adds a little extra to the monitor. You can, as I said, overclock the monitor, and you can see I've got it off at the moment, but you can boost it up to 120 Hz. If that doesn't work, then you can always disable it, and on top of that, you can reduce the overclock, so you can have 180 Hz and you can have 160 Hz, depending on what your setup is. When you do overclock, you have to apply and reboot, and it switches off the monitor and reboots the monitor. So, moving on, you'll be able to see in the settings, you can also have a power off USB charge, meaning you can still charge your phone through the USB, which is the 4 USB 3.0 sockets at the back of the monitor, in order to enable you to charge your phone whilst your computer is off. A cool feature if you ask me. So, now moving on to its gaming performance, which is something I want to definitely emphasize over here, because obviously a lot of people will be buying this for gaming. So here I've got it set up on playing Counter-Strike, which is a very much well-known game for competitive gameplay. And it's one of those games that where you've got a responsive monitor, you have got an edge in terms of playing your opponents, and especially you want a really responsive monitor which is very well designed, that basically has low ghosting or anything like that. Anyway, what I'm trying to say over here is that I played Counter-Strike whilst testing this monitor, and obviously I did play like a game like Battlefield in order to test its G-Sync capabilities, but Counter-Strike was my main game because it's such a intensive game. Now what I noticed is that this monitor had quite a lot of ghosting. I'm not sure if you're able to see over here, but you'll see this red, these little black dots on the side over here have a little bit of a trail behind them, and that is due to the ghosting that's occurring on the monitor. Now I noticed the ghosting even on my desktop, no matter what setting I had, be it with overdrive enabled on extreme or off, G-Sync on or off, 144 Hz, 200 Hz, or even a 60 Hz, I noticed ghosting. So it's something that you should definitely bear in mind, because when it came to me, actually gaming on Counter-Strike, I noticed that the monitor just didn't feel right, because it just felt a little bit weird on the eye. So just bear that in mind, because that is a massive deal to me, especially when it's a £600 monitor, and it makes a massive difference. In order to try and boost down the ghosting, you can always enable overdrive mode, but to drop down the input lag, you can do that by overdrive mode. But as you'll see, or hopefully you can see, the corner of this wall goes really black really quickly, and that's again due to the ghosting that's occurring, and it's massive and it's very much noticeable. So personally I used overdrive off. Even on normal you notice the ghosting, which was even worse. So ghosting is present on this monitor even with overdrive mode enabled or disabled, and it's even more present with it enabled, especially on extreme mode. Now, how do I feel about the monitor given that it's a 200 Hz or 144 Hz G-Sync capable monitor? Well, if you're into casual gaming, then you're going to love G-Sync and you're going to love how the monitor plays. However, if you're really into competitive gaming like I am when it came to Counter-Strike, I just felt that the ghosting kind of just didn't make it feel right. It was a responsive monitor, so in other words, it does feel quite good with its input lag. It's quite low, and I know what the chickens have done are absolutely nothing, but still. But anyway, it is quite a responsive monitor, and you don't have any problems moving left and right. But this input lag becomes even more reduced and better when you enable overdrive. But as I said, that increases ghosting, which causes another problem. So in terms of competitive gaming, can I suggest it? Well, I don't feel so, because it just feels just a little bit slow and just a little bit lacking in that extra, so I say final third, as they would say in football, and it means that you don't have a seamless gaming experience. I don't know if that sounds so marketing-esque, but anyway, my point is you notice it being not properly optimized for gaming versus a TN panel which is 144 Hz. Funnily enough, I own a TN panel 144 Hz. I also own a overclocked PLS panel which is 96 Hz. And both those monitors, in my opinion, are better options than this. The reason why is because the PLS panel has better color accuracy and less washed out colors, whereas the TN panel has more washed out colors but much better gaming performance in terms of its lower input lag and its lack of any ghosting. So overall, guys, what can I say about the monitor? It's a little bit of a hit and miss. It tries to do a little bit of everything, but unfortunately doesn't really exceed in any of them, meaning that a £600 monitor makes it, with its price of £600, it makes it hard to recommend. It's £600, it's only 1080p, and it has ghosting, and its colours aren't really great if you're going to be movie watching. Sure, it doesn't have any sort of colour problems apart from being a little bit washed out, nor does it have major gaming problems like a PLS or IPS, normal IPS or PLS panel might have, given their normal refresh rate of 60 or 75 Hz. But even then I would still pick those over this one. So that is my honest opinion of the monitor, guys. Let me know in the comments below what you think of the monitor. Definitely like this video for more honest content like you're seeing right now. And subscribe if you want to see more. And favorite and share if any of your family or friends are looking to buy this Predator Z35 monitor to see what I think of it, or an honest opinion of what I think about it, because it's very hard to find honest, unbiased reviews out there. Alright guys, I've been Totally Dubbed. Take care and bye-bye.